Hey there, everybody. Brian King here. Welcome to another episode of The Compassionate Dad. I'm really excited to have today's guest on because he's just a powerhouse. I was introduced to him not too long ago, and I've become a very faithful follower of everything that he does because his thinking is so forward-looking. It is so innovative. It is so outside the box. It is so entrepreneurial, and that's what's exciting about it. So I want to bring to the show right now the brilliant, the charismatic, and the always timely Alex Charfen.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. So one of the coolest things about your thinking around the entrepreneurial mindset is that this isn't necessarily a set of traits that you can go to school and learn from a book necessarily, but that it's hardwired into our brain and into our DNA to be an entrepreneur. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, Brian, I take a much different view of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship than I think most of the world does. When you look at the world and you look at who we are as entrepreneurs, I think I see it differently. Ever since I was a really young kid, I studied successful people and I obsessed over what created success and how did people throughout history who changed the world in fact do that? How were they able to do that? And I see it like clearly now. I think there's 4 different types of people in the world. And when you look at who each type is, evolutionarily, human beings must have done something amazing to survive for as long as we have. Because when you look at a baby human compared to a baby anything else, if we put a baby kid, a kid in a crib with a baby any other species, that other species is probably going to win. And the baby human's probably going to die. And there's a reason why we were able to survive for as long as we have. And I think it's because when you look at whether you believe in intelligent design or evolution or the Big Bang or whatever it is, just fast forwarding your dogma to where human beings existed. And I think that we are all different. And so I'll let you self-qualify, Brian, as what I call the entrepreneurial personality type. That's the name of my book. We have a podcast called the Momentum Podcast for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type, because I don't see this as a condition. I don't see this as something you go learn in school. I don't see this as, being an entrepreneurial personality type as really even a decision. I see it as it's hardwired into the very nature of who people like us are. So let's start. I'll let you qualify and everybody who's watching can do it along with us. So the first type of person in the world is what I call the caretaker. And this is a big population out there. And in fact, here's what's interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs, when they hear this for the first time, they're like, oh, I'm a caretaker. I must be a caretaker because I really like to help other people. Well, there's a way that I can disqualify you from this, Brian. Do you like to change bedpans?
Hell no.
Right. But do you see how you answered that like aggressively, almost violently, like hell no? Here's the fact. When you look at when you look at the act of changing a bedpan, there are people out there who are hardwired caretakers who actually like it. In fact, Brian, I've been in a room before because I'm the same way. I'm like, holy shit, if I'm changing a bedpan, I didn't write a big enough check. And but I've watched someone do it and I've asked that person like, hey, do you enjoy changing the bedpan? And I've gotten an answer, something like, Alex, if the bedpan needed changing and I could be of service and I was able to be here and help that person, I feel fulfilled. I'm always like, wow, that's really special that I don't feel that way. But man, I'm glad you do. Because did our evolutionary tribe need the caretakers? Absolutely. Because guys like you and I, we would have just kept running. Somebody needs a bedpan change, screw them. Like, let's go figure out what we're going to do next. And so you're not a caretaker, right? So let's look at population number 2 of human beings. And it should make sense that the human species has these different subcategories, because when you look at almost every species out there, there's different subcategories. And so the second subcategory, I call them the communicators. These are the human beings that like to talk. They like to communicate. They like to express themselves. They like to share with the people around them. Here's what's interesting. If I'm sharing with a group of entrepreneurs, they all say, oh, I must be a caretaker. Then they hear the bedpan thing. They're like, no, I'm not a caretaker. And the next thing they say, well, I must be the communicator. And, here's what's interesting. People like us are often seen as communicators because you have a podcast. We're on live right now. We're out sharing with people. We're doing what we can to get exposure. But the fact is, like, I can disqualify you from communicator with one simple question. Sure. Do you like small talk?
No.
No, right? Not at all.
I want meaty conversation.
Right. Well, and the fact is, when you walk into a building and somebody says, man, wasn't it hot out there? Like, my first instinct is, you're wasting my time. Weather is not a relevant conversation. We're in a controlled environment. Why are we even talking about it? Let's get on to something that matters. However, when you look at the communicator, did our evolutionary tribe need the population that was programmed to talk about anything? We did. We needed people who would say, hey, there's a woolly mammoth over there. There's a cliff over there. Don't eat this thing. It'll kill you. Like, we needed someone to carry on oral tradition. We needed that group. And so we needed the caretakers. We needed the communicators. You've now qualified that you're not either one of those. The third population in the world, and this one's, if we're ever going to have conflict with the population, it's usually this one. I call them the coordinators. And really my code word for them is the organizers and memorizers. The coordinators love details. They love fine print. They want to get involved in stuff. They like to, they like the act of coordinating, the act of organizing, putting things together in groups, like, it's usually not, this isn't one where entrepreneurs say, oh, that must be me. This is usually one where we're like, nope, not me. I can disqualify you from this group with one simple question. How many committees have you volunteered to be on in your life?
The ones I did, I wasn't on them long.
Right. And you probably weren't welcome, because people like us have a really hard time with committee decision making, because it feels like you're running through molasses, carrying a body weight, like not able to really get things done. And coordinators love committees. They'll sit on multiple of ones. They're out there, doing everything they can to get on a new committee. And it's kind of crazy, because when you look at communicators, coordinators, the caretakers, we obviously are not any one of those three. But when you look at our evolutionary tribe, did we need all three of those? Absolutely. We needed the coordinators to tell us when the seasons were, when to plant, when to go gather the crops, store stuff for the winter. So we needed all of these personalities. But if you look at our evolutionary tribe, and human beings have survived for millennia, how is it that we did that? We had the communicators, the coordinators, the caretakers. What's missing, Brian?
The leaders.
Leaders is what a lot of us think instinctively, but I think evolutionarily, if we peel the onion back just a little bit more, what's missing is the evolutionary hunter. The person who gets up every day and goes into the future, creates a new reality, comes back and insists that it becomes real. The person who's hardwired to create momentum, to create forward progress, to go out and do more, be more, try harder, and keep the tribe alive. And when you look at the entrepreneurial personality type, to me, the entrepreneurial personality type, the evolutionary hunter, we are one and the same. And if I ask you, Brian, haven't you been on the hunt most of your life?
Oh, every second of every day.
And doesn't the term evolutionary hunter resonate? Like, when I say that, don't you go, man, that kind of makes a lot of sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it's brilliant what you've been talking about so far. Because one of the things that keeps me hungry every day and prevents me from having a moment of boredom is I'm always looking at what I'm doing and asking, how can I do it better?
Yeah, well, that's that drive to improve things that we have as evolutionary hunters. Because here's where, I want to confirm the suspicions of anybody listening, including you, Brian. If you've ever felt like you've been put down or pushed aside or told like you were less than by one of these groups or by people in the world who judged you just for the very reason that you are you, I want to confirm that actually happened. And it probably has happened more than once, because when you look at a caretaker, a coordinator, a communicator, here's the reality of who they are. They live for the present. And I would go further than that. Caretakers, coordinators, communicators, they strive for average and they cling desperately to the status quo. They don't want to change anything. Because if you're one of those three groups, what you literally do is you get up every day, you live in the present, and you are essentially task-based. It's like, how do I get everything that I need to get done so that I can achieve my goal of caretaking, coordinating, or communicating? And it's a trip, because guys like you and I can't do 5 minutes of small talk. You get two communicators at a water cooler, and they'll have a 45-minute conversation about a 30-minute TV show. How in hell does that happen? The fact is, like, people like us can't do that. I get in a cold sweat when I'm forced to do small talk. I had to go to my daughter's open house day at their school yesterday, and I'm uncomfortable walking on the campus because I know I'm going to be involved in those surface level, goofy communication, people I don't really relate that well to, and it's going to be the majority because we are a tiny, little minority of human beings that gets up every day and asks, how do we make things better? How do we improve things? How do we make the condition better for everybody? And how do we keep this human tribe alive? And in history, we have always been the people who are going out and like killing something. But today we are the only source of consistent positive human evolution. And I believe we always will be. And when you look at the human, the human condition overall, we are that small little group that says, let's change everything. And we have to be there.
One thing I want to get from you, Alex, is that I just thought about it as you were talking just now. What is it about us, the entrepreneurial types, that are able to take so many hits and keep going? We seem to be inherently resilient. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's all kinds of theories about that. I'll share mine with you, Brian. I think that the evolutionary hunter is hardwired to be less emotional than the rest of the world. We're hardwired to be more resilient. We're hardwired to take damage, to take flack, to take criticism, to be put down, told we're less than, all of those things, because here's where we feel alive. Like, let's be very clear about where the evolutionary hunter feels connected, in flow, alive, and like we're actually accomplishing what we want to accomplish only when we're on the hunt. And if we're not on the hunt, in momentum, making things happen and moving forward, we feel like we'll do anything we can to get back to it. And so it doesn't matter how much criticism, how much constraint, we'll fight against it to get back in momentum. Brian, when you're in momentum, word for you, when things are falling into place, when the world is following in your wake, what does it feel like to you?
When I'm in momentum,
yeah,
it's like I'm on a high.
Exactly. It is literally a high. In fact, and let me explain the 3 different stages of momentum, because here's what I want everyone who says they're an evolutionary hunter. If you relate to what I'm saying, I want you to understand something. The rest of the world is not hardwired like we are, and they criticize us. They put us down. They hold us in place. And here's the fact. I don't think people like you and I really understand happy or sad. Now, play with me for a second. I realize happy's on and sad is off, and it's somewhat binary. You can judge that. But Brian, honestly, what's the difference to you if somebody says, I'm happy, sad, or frustrated, pissed off, ticked off, confused, or just plain not going to talk to you? Is there a difference between those?
The only difference energetically, not too much. Between your ears, you're telling your story.
And the fact is, it's just a bunch of words to people like us, because as soon as somebody says something to you like, hey, Brian, how are you feeling today? Don't you kind of want to punch me just for asking the question?
Well, I think it's kind of an irrelevant question.
Right. Because we don't feel like the rest of the world. And so that's why I think we do have a higher level of resilience, a higher level of need to keep doing what we're doing, because here's the fact. That chemical high of momentum is what we live for. And here's what I want every person like us to understand. Brian, me, every evolutionary hunter out there, every entrepreneurial personality type out there, as we approach a goal, it loses importance to us with the speed that we're approaching the goal. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
So as you cross the finish line, it's like, who gives a shit? Now we need to go back on the hunt. Why? Because evolution has programmed us to be reactive towards the hunt, to be engaged in the hunt, to be on the hunt and keeping the tribe alive. So when we approach a goal, it literally loses chemical importance to us. And it's not until we replace it with another one or go back on the hunt that we actually move forward. And so our 3 stages, and I'm sharing this because I want everyone who relates to what I'm saying to know how to program yourself for success. So the first stage is when people like us are in momentum. Brian, you already shared it. Makes you feel like you're on a high. And here's what I know about being in momentum for people like us. There's 3 different places where it dramatically affects us, and they're foundational. The first one is when you're in momentum, you feel physiologically boosted. Like you literally can do more. You have more stamina. You can get more done. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I noticed that I sit up straighter. I'm more focused.
Yep. Well, and that's the second thing. So first, physiologically, we're boosted. We literally can do more. We're stronger. We can get more accomplished. Second, we're cognitively boosted. We actually think better. We think faster. We make decisions better. We can see the unique connections and see our next move faster. We can see around corners. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
And now here's the third place. When we're in momentum, and this is big, this is crucial for anyone like us. we're chemically boosted. You already said you feel the high, but when we're in momentum, we literally feel that dopamine, serotonin high of being in momentum on the hunt. Why? Because evolutionarily, we had to have a subspecies of human beings that was committed to picking up a fucking stick and a rock and going to kill something. And in order to be that type of person, you better get a huge chemical charge out of going on the hunt. And if you think about who we were evolutionarily, you and I would be wearing loincloths, holding a couple of sticks and going to try and slay a woolly mammoth. So today, when we go to start a business, do something new, expose ourselves, be vulnerable, the rest of the world sees us as risk takers. I call bullshit. Entrepreneurs aren't risk takers. We're supremely confident about exactly what we're doing, or we wouldn't do it. We're evolutionary hunters. The world sees it as risky because they don't understand how we're wired.
Yeah, and none of that, when we're picking up that stick and that rock, we're not going to try and kill the animal. It's going to happen.
No doubt. No doubt. That's how it works. And well, we have to. We, in fact, the second you pick up the stick, you are hardwired to not be able to let it go. That's why we get called things like OCD and obsessive and compulsive and all that shit, because we don't look at things like the rest of the world. Brian, 10,000 tries to do what? Are you familiar with the story?
Create the light bulb.
Create the light bulb, right? So Thomas Edison, one of the greatest evolutionary hunters of all time. You look at how much that guy accomplished in his life, and it's absolutely overwhelming. Like, he could not turn it off. And so Edison creates the light bulb, 10,000 tries. Like, you want to talk about obsessive compulsive disorder. Holy shit, 10,000 tries at the same thing. Can you imagine the phone call today to 911? Officer, I need you to come arrest my neighbor, Tom. He's in his garage. He's blowing shit up. He's been doing it for weeks. I went over there and I asked him, when are you going to stop? And he said he wouldn't stop until he turned night into day. Today, Edison would be in the back of the SWAT car, shot up with Wellbutrin or some other bullshit, and we'd be sitting here in the dark because we no longer respect the incredible attributes that create evolutionary hunters and make us who we are.
Can I give you two more stories really quick?
Yeah.
One about Edison. His entire lab or his business was like 3 blocks long.
Yeah, Menlo Park.
And something happened. There was a big fire. The whole place burned down. And he was standing, off to the side. And he says to one of his kids, hey, go back home and bring all your friends here. And he says, what for? He says, because they're never going to see a fire like this in the rest of their life. It's like, hey, here's the show. Because he already had in his mind, okay, as soon as it's done, we're going to rebuild it. Marshall Field had the same mentality. During the Chicago fire, when the original Marshall Field store burned down, other merchants were saying, oh, man, this is terrible. We got to get out of here. This is bad news or bad luck. And, hey, Marshall, what are you going to do? I'm going to rebuild my store right on the same spot. If it burns down again, I'm going to build it as many times as I need to because this is where my store is.
No question, man. And when you look at evolutionary hunters throughout history, that's how we're hardwired. We can't let go once we tie in. Now, there is a challenge, though. I want everyone to understand, we are not always in momentum. It doesn't always work out like that for us because you're in momentum. That's stage one. And so everyone who's listening, your goal in life is to stay in momentum, is to not fall out of that place. And anyone who tells you it's a temporary experience is bullshitting you. They don't understand that that's where we were meant to live. That's when we feel alive. That's who we are. The second stage is when we're facing resistance. This is when the cards are stacked against us. We don't have the resources. We don't have the time. We don't have everything we need. It doesn't look like we're going to make it. And everyone in the world is like, dude, you need to go do something different. But we see a tiny little light at the end of the tunnel. And the people around us are going, it's a train. But we keep moving towards it. We keep stepping towards it. We compel that light closer to us. We step through it. And that's when we, in fact, create our lives. So we have in momentum where we create momentum. We have facing resistance where we create momentum. We are hardwired to keep moving forward. Now, the third stage is the one we really have to be careful with. And Sammy, this is probably what you're thinking about, because the third stage is when we're in constraint, when we are held in place. And Brian, this is that condition where either the circumstances or the people around you or what you're doing make you feel like you can't go forward, make you feel like you can't see that light at the end of the tunnel. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, when I kind of get in those places where I feel like I don't have the solutions, I get frightened into action because I hate feeling that sense of helplessness or stagnation. Well, let's go back to the time that you felt like you were in full constraint. Do you remember being in a job?
Oh God, yes.
Do you remember how shitty that was?
Yeah, I had to will myself to go.
Okay, so do you remember like how when you would think about going to the job, you were physiologically affected?
I had stomach aches.
Stomach aches. Did you get tired?
Yeah.
Feel worn down, like kind of you got your ass kicked without getting in a fight?
Mm-hmm.
Constraint does to us. So first, when we're in constraint physiologically, we deteriorate almost immediately. Second, when we're in constraint, remember having brain fog, trouble making decisions, feeling overwhelmed. Like we actually cognitively get shut down when we're in constraint. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Now here's the big one. Do you remember the chemical depression of being in constraint? Because the same way being in momentum chemically propels us, when we are in constraint, chemically we become defective. This is when we look, this is when we get diagnosed, when we look disordered, when we have like all of the symptoms that make people think about people like us as being less than. And the fact is, when we're in constraint, we show up that way. We do not look right when we're in constraint. People like us need to be in momentum. And so when you're in constraint, you physiologically break down, cognitively break down, chemically break down. That's who we are as evolutionary hunters. So the way that you stay in momentum is you fight constraint wherever you can. And we have to be relentless about it. I have a way I coach my clients. It's a very simple statement. The people, the places, and the things in your life are either giving you momentum or they're taking it away. And you have to examine your life on a daily basis and be relentless. We all allow people, places, things into our life that take away momentum, and we need to stop because we only get to do this one time. And for people like us, being held back, being held in place, feeling like we're constrained is crushing. It will rob you of your soul.
Preach, brother.
No question, Brian. I mean, that's just it. You know, this is how I see it because I've worked with some of the most successful people in the world. And here's what I want you to know. You know, you and I are not the extreme. Like you look at some of the real extremes, and it's people who they can't deal with any level of constraint. I wrote a article for Success Magazine that's been shared over 180,000 times.
Damn.
And it's no shit. It's one of the top articles on success.com. It's called The 10 Principles of the Self-Made Billionaire. And one of the things that I share is that billionaires limit what they tolerate. Billionaires will not tolerate the same shit that you and I will. In fact, I call billionaires the 1% of people that tolerate what 99% of the world will, and they are the people who will not do what the rest of the population does. And so when we limit what we tolerate, when we pull ourselves out of there, when we don't allow pressure and noise in our lives, that's when we stay in the highest level of momentum.
I've been cleaning house lately on my Facebook groups because they're the ones that want help, and then there are the ones that want to reinforce their bullshit.
Yeah.
On why they should remain stuck. Now, one thing I know for sure, and Sammy, I want to thank you so much for engaging like this, because there are people out there that clearly have that entrepreneurial wiring, but they're kind of self-sabotaging because they've got this noise in their life from people that don't get it, people that don't support them, and they really want to step outside of that job. They want to create a side hustle, and they want to finally embrace that entrepreneurial will or hardwiring that they have. What kind of guidance can you give those folks to help them get off the fence and get into the game?
My guidance is going to be totally counterintuitive to anything that you've heard before. So I want to put that out there at the beginning because I don't coach like the rest of the world coaches. I have this unique lens because I've been a professional consultant for my entire career. I've worked since I was 21 with Global 100, Fortune 500. I've consulted with billionaires. I've worked with some of the most successful people on the planet. And I see things differently. I don't think that the right way to move forward is to go create some crazy, overwhelming goal. And I don't think the right way to move forward is to go and get to a rah motivation event. The way that I coach anyone to get in the game, to get out there is first, step one is you lower the pressure and noise in your life. Because right now, if you're not doing what you should be doing, and there's a gap in between what you know you should do and what you are doing, in fact, every day, lower the pressure and noise in your life. Get rid of the people that aren't giving you momentum. Unload the things in your life that don't matter to you anymore. Go through every single thing in your life and say, do I really need this? Do I really want this? Does it work for me? And if it doesn't, throw it away, get it out of your life. Get to the place where everything around you feels like it's giving you momentum, and your life will change. So step one is you lower pressure and noise. Step two is you increase protection and support. Here's one of the hardest things for people. This is called the contribution equation. And Brian, just really quick, let me share with you where this came from. Ever since I was a kid, I have been different than the rest of people. You know, I understood I was different from a very young age. I'm one of those entrepreneurs that knew at a young age that, like, I wasn't like everyone else, but I didn't really know who I was or what I was. And so I started studying successful people, and I saw this repeated over and over again in the thousands of life histories I've read. First, every successful person in history got rid of the noise. Like Einstein started wearing the same clothes so he wouldn't even have decision-making fatigue in the morning. You look at Einstein, I mean, Zuckerberg, Jobs, you can go through a massive list of people who all wear the same stuff every day because they're lowering the noise. They're making things easier on themselves. They're getting rid of the people, the places, the things that don't move them forward. Step two, you lower pressure and noise, then you increase protection and support. One of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs today is that we've all been taught this stuff like fake it until you make it, or never let them see you sweat. You know what? That's just garbage. The fact is that really equates to lie and deny. And the faster you can get real, the faster you can get raw, and the faster you're transparent with the people around you about where you actually are, you'll start attracting and finding the help that you need. Now, I know this is hard. I call it the entrepreneurial dilemma. We need far more protection and support than the average person to get to our full potential, but any request for protection or support makes us feel exposed and vulnerable. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So here's how you get over it. You start doing it a lot, and you do it habitually, and you do it over and over again. One of the other 10 principles of self-made billionaires that I share with people is that billionaires have an absolute reliance on people. You look at the average entrepreneur, and they're doing everything they can not to communicate with people, to stay away from people, to not build a team, to not ask for help. Billionaires literally can't get from their house to their office without 10 people being involved. Everything in their lives is coordinated. When we see Richard Branson and we're like, oh, look at that independent guy, owns an island, like does whatever he wants. Guys, we got to be realistic here. He's kite surfing with a naked chick on his back, but that perfectly shot publicity photo probably had a team of 30 people coordinating it. They had the chase boat, the lifeguards, the helicopter, the photographers, everybody who was there. I mean, there is such a high reliance on people. Branson can't move a pencil without people being involved.
Richard Branson delegates everything so that he can chase the next opportunity.
Everything.
Yep.
Everything. And as entrepreneurs, we don't do that. So what we do is we raise pressure and noise, and we decrease protection and support. The vast majority of entrepreneurs today, it looks like they're in a contest to see who can put up with more shit, and then they're not asking for help. So reverse that equation, lower pressure and noise, start asking for help. Everything in your life is going to change. The third step is if you lower pressure and noise, you increase protection and support, your strengths and abilities will just show. Like, you don't have to compel this to happen. You don't have to go out and like take a bunch of classes. Here's what I know about people like us. You start doing the right things in the world. You start paying attention to the right things. You lower pressure and noise, ask for help. We just get endemically smarter. Like, we can't help it. In fact, Brian, haven't you been in that situation where somebody's asked you a question or had you, do something for them, and you answer, you give a response, and you walk away thinking, where the hell did that come from?
Oh, man, it's like the universe downloaded something into my brain.
That's exactly it. Because as evolutionary hunters, we are all connected to our tribe. And there is this greater intelligence that some call God, some call Allah, Wayne Dyer called Source. Some people refer to as the universe. But the fact is, we all feel it. And I'm completely like decision agnostic here. I don't care what you call it as long as you feel it. Because the fact is, when you lower pressure and noise and you increase protection and support, that source, that power, that feeling of God, that feeling of the universe will feed you what you need. And it will help you go forward and compel you to do what you want to do in the world. And here's the fourth part. You lower pressure and noise, increase protection and support, your strengths and abilities will show. And here's the most important. You can go make your greatest contribution. And when I say greatest contribution, I want to define that, because a lot of people get confused and they say, man, is he talking about like starting charities? If you want to start a charity, that's fine. But I think you can do a lot better by starting a business and giving the money away. Starting a charity is basically a commitment to beg for the rest of your life. But when I look at contribution, here's what I know. Every entrepreneur I've ever worked with is looking to make a greater contribution and change the world and leave their dent in the universe. And you know what? We might start out compelled by money. We might start out driven by wealth. But every entrepreneur I've ever known who has made massive amounts of money, one of the biggest decisions they make in their life is how do they give it all away? And how do they help other people? And how do they influence the world? And how do they make the world a better place? So we're all driven by contribution anyway. I just want to shortcut it and admit it up front and start making sure that that's what we're actually looking at doing. And so for me, I'm a capitalist. I'm a passionate capitalist. I'm a defensive capitalist. And I can even be sometimes a somewhat violent capitalist, because I think capitalism is the most perfect system in the world. And anybody who doesn't agree with me, you're not my client. Because here's how I look at it. Human beings were put here on this earth to help each other. And there is billions of people in the world and no two of us are same. Wouldn't it make sense that we're supposed to offset each other's strengths and weaknesses? Wouldn't it make sense that we're supposed to collaborate with each other, work together, make things happen together? And here's how I look.
I call that the law of complementarity.
There you go.
Designed to complement each other.
There's no question. And when you look at capitalism, capital flows to contribution in a capitalist system. The person who's making the biggest contribution, exposed the most, vulnerable, doing the most, sharing at the highest level, that's the person who's getting the most capital. And so the way I look at it is go out and make your greatest contribution and the money will come to you. Napoleon Hill said it too. He said, if you want everything you want in life, help other people get what they want in life. And so for me, the contribution equation, lower pressure and noise, increased protection and support, your strengths and abilities show you can make your greatest contribution. That is a playbook for anyone who's sitting here watching us right now thinking, can I, should I, could I? Because here's what I want you to know. If you're thinking the question, the answer is hell yes, because the rest of the world doesn't even think that way. You know, every night at 7:30, there's a show like Wheel of Fortune that plays on a broadcast network. And I just want to show you how different we are than the rest of the world. Because when Wheel of Fortune doesn't play, the TV network gets hundreds of thousands of calls from people saying, where's Wheel of Fortune? It shows you how the rest of the world does not think like we do. Because, Brian, I know you and I could never even consider making that phone call. In fact, if Wheel of Fortune didn't play, we'd never know it. The rest of the world lives for right now. They live in the moment. They live to pass time. And they live to do one of the things that we talked about earlier. People like us are only compelled by making a greater contribution.
Man, I don't even know what the hell's on TV, and I don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean,
when you're talking about contribution, the three names that come to mind right away are Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and
Elon Musk, maybe?
No, I just have his name, Warren Buffett.
Sure.
Because Warren Buffett has his billions of dollars set up to go to charity when he dies. He's not giving inheritance to his kids. He tells them to go make their own money. He's thinking in terms of contribution. Bill Gates has given it away to the third world to help eradicate disease. I know that Zuckerberg wants to help with education. He wants to help improve society. So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Well, here's what happens, Brian. I think, you can go through the lives of every great entrepreneur, and we are compelled by questions. And when you look at the questions that we transition through, I see 9 distinct questions that we transition through in our lives. And when it starts with, how do I stop pressure and noise? Most of us are like, how do I stop the noise? That's our first question because we experience more than most. Then the next question that compels entrepreneurs forward is, what is wrong with me? When we're younger, we realize very early we're different than the rest of the people around us. Most of us. Some it takes a little bit longer. Some don't realize it until their 40s or 50s. But we all come to the conclusion, man, I'm not like everybody else. We go from what is wrong with me to the question, how do I get ahead? Now, when Warren Buffett was in the how do I get ahead and how do I get further ahead periods, the fact is what he was looking at was, how did he make more? Warren Buffett used to say you shouldn't give money away. Like, let's be honest, there was a point in time when this guy's life where he had his communion money squirreled away somewhere. But the next question that compels entrepreneurs is, how does my team get ahead? How does my team get further ahead? How do we help others get ahead? And how do we help everyone? And you can look at every great entrepreneur. Bill Gates went from public enemy number one to going out and trying to cure most of the world diseases. Warren Buffett went from the guy who said, don't ever share money with anybody, to going out and trying and giving all of his money away and compelling others to do the same. And he now controls the largest sovereign wealth fund in the history of man. The fund that Buffett controls, the billions of dollars, it's almost $500 billion at this point. So the money that he has at his disposal exceeds the gross national, or the gross domestic product of most countries in the world. Not some, most. And so when you look at who we are compelled by questions, driven to make a greater contribution. And by the end of every great entrepreneur's life, if they're around long enough, they want to give it all away.
Damn, Alex, this has been the most incredible conversation I've had, man. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to share a bunch of links with you guys right now that are also going to go in the show notes, because you have got to follow this man. He's got too much to offer, and you cannot afford to not be in on it. Start with his website, piece of cake, charfen.com. Not hard to remember. And also check out his podcast. You thought what he said here was brilliant? You need to listen to his podcast. And you're going to find that at momentumpodcast.com. And one thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go get his book, which is the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. And if you want to follow up with me at all, you can find me at The Compassionate Dad, where I teach you how to take any hit that life throws at you and bounce forward with a smile on your face. So, Alex, man, love you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much beauty.
Oh, my pleasure, Brian. You know, I appreciate the chance for the exposure. Sammy, thanks for being here and being so participative. And can I share a message for anyone who's heard this today?
Absolutely.
Here's what I want all of you to know. Brian, do you remember when you first realized you were different than the people around you?
Yeah, and it kind of hurt at first.
Yeah, how old were you?
I was in preschool, like 5 years old.
Yeah, you and I both, man. I knew I was different from the first time that I met other people. And here's what I know about people like us. Every evolutionary hunter, every entrepreneurial personality type has felt different, judged, alone. We've been told to sit down, shut up, quit squirming, stop making everybody else uncomfortable. We've all heard things like, we don't feel right. And it's not somebody actually saying, hey, Brian, you don't feel right. But what they're actually saying is, hey, tell me how you're feeling. Why aren't you more excited? Why aren't you less excited? Do you know what I'm talking about, Brian? Why
can't you for my wife at least once a week.
Well, and the fact she should read my book, she'll understand you better. And here's what I know about people like us. We felt alone, different, isolated, confused, and maybe like we don't even have a place in this world. But what I want you all to know is that today society has this equation. If you don't look like everyone else, talk like everyone else, show up like everyone else, and learn like everyone else, you're a broken person we need to medicate, diagnose, and make normal, which is complete bullshit, because throughout history, the person who didn't look like everyone else, talk like everyone else, show up like everyone else, and learn like everyone else is exactly the person who went on to change the world. And the fact that you feel different, the fact that you're not the same as everyone else, the fact that you don't think you fit in means that you are the very thing that brilliance is made of, because brilliance is not average. The rest of the world all falls in place. They sway like the wheat in a field. And the fact is, the person who stands up, says things should be different, makes things new, is exactly the brilliant person who has always changed things throughout history. So if any one of you has ever felt different, isolated, or alone, here's my message. The fact is, if you think back through the timeline of history that matters to you, and everyone who matters to be remembered, everyone who you think of who's important to you, everyone you remember, they were just like us. And the fact is that if you know you're different and you felt that way, that is your club. Everyone from Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Pythagoras and Einstein and Newton and everyone forward who has gone on to change the world, leave their mark, and make a dent in the universe is exactly like you and I. So the next time you feel different or discouraged or alone, I want you to remember club. That is your tribe, and you have a moral responsibility to all of us to lower pressure and noise, increase protection and support, let your strengths and abilities show, and go make your greatest contribution. And I want you to know there is nothing wrong with you, and you are not alone. Because for every one of us who's been diagnosed or disabled or had an issue or a challenge or whatever it was that you are going through, one of us has been there, overcome it, and gone on to change the world, and you can too.
Boom. All right. Thank you again, Alex. Alex Charfen, everybody. You are the best. One thing I have to add to my schedule today is to shout your name from the rooftops. So if you hear a crazy man screaming, it's me. Those of you watching, bless you. Thank you for your time. I honor your attention. I'm grateful for it. Please take this episode, share it far and wide, because if it changed your life, imagine what it's going to do to everybody else you share it with. So, see, my dog's even excited. So, thanks again, buddy. We'll stay in touch. I can see us doing this again. Take care, everybody.